All right, we pretty much finished part one of The Dead Have No Need of Ethics. Took us a couple days just to get through the prologue. And I don't know if that's a philosopher thing or what that is, but I felt like I had to lay down all these presuppositions and definitions of terms, even like what is a human, what is a Christian, before we could get on to actually discussing ethics proper. I realized I left out one thing, though, at the very end of the prologue, where I'm discussing Christian ethics. So we spent a lot of time discussing what is a human being, and then a lot of time discussing what is an actual Christian. And I was shooting for something kind of narrow, right? I wasn't just looking for the broad 2.5 billion people on the planet type of Christian. I was looking for something much more specific. But I failed to discuss what is a Christian ethic. So based on our discussion of what is a Christian and what ethics are, would anyone like to tell me what Christian ethics are or what they should be? What is Christian ethics? And I'm just going to tell you right off the get-go, I am quite horrified and traumatized by many Christians' answers on this question. So try not to traumatize me, but if you must, I can handle it.
I think in like a basic sense would be to uphold the law, which would be the Ten Commandments.
Thank you, Caleb.
So
no.
So I would decidedly disagree with that, because Paul makes it rather clear we're not under the law. So I would say a Christian ethic is living in conformity to Christ as a paradigm.
And how, okay, I won't overwork you, Dominique. Thank you. I think in the 12th, 13th century, Thomas A. Kempis wrote a book called The Imitation of Christ. I was in love with that as a little wannabe monastic young man. And his whole idea was Christ is our example, and we should try to live up to that example. What's the problem with that? So
let me nuance that then, because I don't think it's by our own efforts that we try to be like the perfect man, because that's just a new form of self-help, self-effort. I would say Christ is the paradigm for our ethic. The Spirit is what produces the fruit that brings us into conformity with that ethic.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
So
Thank
it's
you,
more.
That's what I'm shooting for. What Caleb discussed is a much more common response, where Christians think about the law or the commandments, or even if it's like Jesus's commandments, right? Love your neighbor as yourself. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. But those really would fall under the broader category of what I would call divine command theory, which will be one of the 9 theories we're going to discuss. And I'm going to try to break any of you that want to make divine command theory equal to Christian ethics, at least the type of Christian ethics I want to talk about. I want to head much more towards where Dominic is in his thinking there. And under divine command theory, it's very simple. It says God's commands are good, God's prohibitions are evil. But you could be a Jew, a Muslim, or a Christian, maybe even a polytheist, and be a divine command theorist. But Paul and Jesus, others made it quite clear, Paul especially, that no one is justified by the law. And the reason for that is none of us can keep it. And Paul in Romans tells us that, all have fallen short of the glory of God. We can't live up to his commands. There was only one person who could, and that was Jesus. And he was the one person that didn't need to, because he was God in the flesh. In other words, his will was equal with right conduct. Yet even Jesus himself always submitted his will to the will of the Father. And what a great example. That's a great example. But it's more than just imitating. It's more than just trying to be like Jesus. It requires us to have the very same Spirit of God in us that was in Jesus, and to live our life in that power and strength. So that's what I want to talk about when we talk about Christian ethics. But I understand the vast, vast majority of Christendom believes it's, I gotta do my do's and not do my don'ts, and that's how I live a moral Christian life. And I'm going to try to present something much different to you when we get to part 2 of the book. But this first part, we're going to critique the different ethical theories.